Okay, what's up guys? I'm here with another video, and in this one I'll just be drawing some kind of a spontaneous ink drawing, right? And the supplies I got here is just a regular Princeton watercolor brush. I think it's a size, I forgot the size of the brushes, but that doesn't really matter. As long as it's a brush you could draw with, yeah, you'll do alright. The paper, it's some kind of it's not like too absorbent, and it's not like Bristol like what I usually work on. This is stuff I use for practice, so it's kind of like sketchbook paper. I don't think it's made for inking. I don't think it's made for using any types of liquid mediums on it, because it probably will warp. But what's surprising to me is that the last couple of sketches I did on this paper did not warp. This is like a really old sketchbook. I just found it in like my storage, and I just decided to use it because I thought it would be cool for a video. And the ink is the Ultradraw, the stuff I usually use, like the one in my previous videos. And here, for some people, they say drawing without like pencil marks underneath is hard. Well, it is, yeah. But you can get used to it pretty fast if you do it often and you know what you're doing. So here, the way I start these is I'll draw something from my imagination, right? Or sometimes I'll use a reference. But most of the time it's imagination because I'm too lazy to use a reference. I should be using references though. I'll start by drawing something, right? It'll be the anchor for my picture. So everything's gonna revolve around this anchor. So here it's gonna be this handsome dude, right? That we're drawing right now. And he's gonna be the anchor for the picture. So everything I'm gonna draw later is gonna have to match his perspective, right? And the composition that is gonna have to like revolve around him, right? And so here I'm just drawing his face, right? And for faces, I should do a video on that later, but yeah. Yeah, as you can see here in this part, I just drew the horns, right? And when you draw bigger with a brush, like on a really big paper, it just feels more comfortable since the brush has so much texture. Brushes have a lot of personality. Unlike pens, right? With pens, you can only do straight lines. Let's be honest here. They're not that versatile, right? They're not that fun. Brushes, on the other hand, they got all these bristles, right? They go in all different directions. Sometimes if you don't wash the brush or take care of it, they become more interesting, right? The more a brush has been through, the more interesting it becomes, right? Like this brush here. Actually, no, this one's, I think, fairly new. I have this other beat up brush that's just, the textures are crazy. So whenever I need like an interesting gravelly texture or some kind of like cool dry brush markings, I'll just whip that out and then boom, you get some magic on the paper. But yeah, as you can see here, I forgot what I was gonna say, but yeah, I'm just gonna start outlining certain things to increase the line weight, right? And here I got lazy with the brush, so I'm not even holding it right. I'm using it like a pen, which I shouldn't have done. Like sometimes I watch footage of myself drawing and all the mistakes I catch, they really piss me off because I shouldn't have been doing that. Like sometimes I hold the brush in an incorrect manner, and I know in some of my videos when I narrate on explain how to use a brush, I say don't hold it like a pen, hold it more loose. And sometimes I'll watch videos of me holding a damn brush and it's not loose, it's just tight. But yeah, as you can see here, I'm just loosely like doing impressions of the anatomy, adding some shadows. I like to add shadows while I draw. I don't like drawing the whole thing out and then adding shadows later because it's boring. Like I like to have fun while I draw, so I like to make it up as I go along. Like if I draw the whole drawing, right, with line work, and then add the shadows after it, I already drew what I wanted to draw, right? So what's the point of going over the whole thing again? So yeah, I'll have fun with it while I go along. That's what you should be doing. Draw to have fun, but also to get better at it and practice. And if you want to have a job doing it, you better draw just for the sake of drawing, you know, and improving. But yeah, here we're gonna go along, more shadows, gonna add some, you know, and when you draw muscles, you gotta make sure that it's very like they're actually, you gotta portray that they're being used, right? Like muscles shouldn't always be so if you're using, like, let's say you're doing a bicep curl, right? Like you're lifting weights with your arm, right? Curling them up. What muscle is being used? Bicep, right? And the forearm, because the forearm's gripping the weight, right? And so when you draw that bicep, it has to be like swollen, right? It's got to be freaking pumped, and the tricep is going to be kind of relaxed. Here in this case, you see the tricep on the arm, right? The muscle is on the back of the arm. See how it's bulging, right? Because I'm trying to show that the guy's hand is going to be out, right? You see the guy's abs, they don't look very clenched. Actually, they kind of do, but he's leaning backwards. But the abs are always engaged if, say, this guy's fighting here, so the abs are probably going to be engaged. So with anatomy, you can't just draw muscles. You have to make sure they look like they're being used or they're being relaxed, because the human body, you know, is a working machine. You can't just lay everything in place on thing like with some kind of like, you can't just draw stuff without understanding how it works. Yeah, like you could draw, like, honestly, your drawings could be crappy, but like if you show like that they're like, if there's a way you could show that they're moving, like, I mean, look at cartoons, for example, right? Like, they're not the most technical drawings, but we like them because they're cool, right? I honestly don't know where I'm going with this, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Like, just make sure that when you're drawing, it doesn't have to be the most technical, it doesn't have to be the most precise. Just make sure you kind of understand what you're drawing. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm trying to say. And if you haven't clicked off the video by now, I think I'm gonna start explaining like hands, right? Because hands are difficult to draw. Make sure that when you're drawing hands, the fingers don't matter as much. See how here I just placed the fingers? The part that matters the most is the part between how the wrist connects to the arm and how that wrist part is portrayed, right? The part in between the wrist and the finger, so the palm, right? The palm has to be in the correct angle. And once you do that right, adding the fingers on is just, it's really easy. It's not difficult at all. So here I'm adding more shadows to the chest. You know, I don't like it when the chest is just puffy. You gotta add some like ripples to the muscle. It makes the character look crazier, you know, like he's some like barbarian just running around. You know, he's been fighting his whole life. And then here we're adding some fur, right, to whatever he's gonna be wearing. It's like if you ever played what's that game called? Skyrim, right? Why does my phone keep unlocking? Oh yeah. So here, oh sorry, I'm doing the recording off the phone, so if it's unclear or anything, I'm sorry. I usually use a mic that's on the headphone. But yeah, here adding some more details. Yeah, when you're using a brush, one cool thing you could do is you could always smudge with your finger. It leaves this cool like cloudy effect. See that? Boom, just like that. Here I messed up. Pretend it's texture. That's the cool thing about a brush. Its markings are so natural, it feels like they blend in. Like if you ever done digital art, you'll see like digital art, in my opinion, is harder than drawing with like on paper with a brush or these regular tools, right? Because on digital, the marks you make, they're so precise, they're so clean. It's very hard to just, you know, let loose like this. Because if you draw on digital like this, it feels so different, since it's just very unclean, and the light of the, what's it called, the screen itself, the light that comes out from it, it just makes your markings look way more permanent. I don't know how to describe it. It just looks way more solid. All the shadows, it just feels like it's also harder to shade in. Like with a brush, you could always like, you'll have like these wispy lines, right? Very what's the word? They're not too opaque sometimes, so that's pretty cool. And you could get a lot of different line quality, and you could twist the brush around, you could rotate the tip of the brush, all that stuff. On digital, I think it's really hard to do that unless you got like a really expensive tablet with a really expensive pen. You could imitate all that on traditional and then just scan it on your computer. And if you always just like coloring digitally, honestly, coloring digitally is not too hard. It's not the hardest thing. It's just drawing digitally that's very difficult. Getting really clean lines on digital. And the thing about digital is that for me, I don't like doing the Control Z stuff. I like, putting stuff down in one go and just leaving it. So I know sometimes, of course, everybody makes mistakes, but I feel like if you're getting used to that Control Z so much, like, you're gonna waste a lot of time. Think about how much time you're gonna waste if you have to keep, if you're gonna condition yourself to keep reversing mistakes. Look, I'm not knocking on digital art, but I'm just saying it's gonna build bad habits. But unless you're pumping out work on time and you could do a lot of work on a timely fashion, then that would be pretty good. But I'm gonna stick to traditional. I also like the feel of the paper. With screens, they're just very smooth, and I don't like that at all. It just feels like the pen glides everywhere. But with this, it's like you feel like a friction between the paper and the tools you're using. And I like that. But here, look at the anatomy. It's this guy just seems very lanky, and I think the legs are way too, the torso itself, like the part from the bottom of the rib cage to like the groin area, it just seems way too long. But I'm gonna try to attribute that to the perspective, right? I'm gonna try to fix the perspective a bit, and then when I draw the second figure, I'm gonna make sure that it looks like he's, when I draw the second figure, I'm gonna make sure that it kind of aligns with his posture a bit, and it makes it look like this is just some kind of foreshortening or something. I'm not too sure, but yeah, that's the great part about this type of inking. Drawing with ink, is that you can just make stuff up and keep correcting as you go along, keep adjusting. It builds up certain useful skills, like drawing on the fly. Like sometimes you're not gonna have, say if you start working and you don't have enough time to sometimes plan something, you could have this confidence that you can draw certain things without planning them too much. Like when I'm drawing, say, comics, for example, and I need to pump out a certain few pages before a certain amount of time, I could just plan the parts that I'm more comfortable knowing that I could draw faster, I'll plan them less, and the parts that I'm less comfortable with, I'll plan them more. So that's the great part about testing your ability at stuff like this. Make sure you test yourself. You can't just always draw with a scaffolding all the time. Make sure you're in a uncomfortable zone, right? You got to make sure that there's some kind of challenge when you're drawing. You can't improve in an easy environment. You have to make sure that what you're doing, there's a level of difficulty to it. Make sure you can train that imagination too. If you can't visualize something that you're gonna draw, like, you don't need to visualize it completely, but you gotta visualize something. If you can't visualize anything, you're not gonna draw anything, right? If you can't, you gotta have a certain level of imagination if you want to draw something. And if you can't train that, right, it's gonna be very difficult to draw stuff that you want to draw. Because at the end of the day, drawing is just a form of communication. It's the ideas in your head and the idea that you want to portray. You want it to be clear on paper. And if you want to get good at doing that, you got to do it more often. So imagine more stuff, draw more stuff, and you get good at it. Also, it's also observation. If you get better at observation, you'll be able to draw more, since you'll understand more stuff. Therefore, you'll add more to your mental library of the things that you could draw. For this part here, I didn't really like how the face was turning out, so I decided to just black out the teeth, and then it made him look like he doesn't have teeth. So I decided to black out more of it, and then I was like, what have I done? And usually it is sometimes something I do, like if something looks bad, I'll just black it out because it looks like there's shadow. See, that started to look cool, and what I decided to do was black out more of it. And I was like, hey, wait, if I just keep blacking out more, it's gonna make the guy look scary. Because before he didn't look threatening at all. I mean, other than the fact that he's carrying a sword and he's about to stab somebody, I think now he looks more threatening. So I decided to, I think what I did was I took a Posca marker, those acrylic paint markers, and yeah, I think I'm shaking it right now, and then I'm gonna apply it and draw the eyes in. Yeah, he looked really dangerous after, you know, you get like glowing eyes underneath a really dark helmet. It's like there's something about that, it just makes people look more threatening. See that? Beautiful. Yeah, that bumped up his scary scale from a 4.5 to a 7. See that? And you could also imply more with the marker. See that? Like the sides of the wrinkles of the skin and like another row of teeth that he looked like he was missing before. Yeah, that looks better. I think I should have actually left the mouth and the other stuff blacked out. I should have. And I think now I'm gonna add like some kind of a cape or something. Yeah, and some kind of a ring that attaches the band of the cape or the cloak or whatever it's called. Yeah, drawing like fabric with brush, it is easier sometimes, I feel, but in this case it got really sloppy with it and it went out of control and I couldn't control it, so I felt like it just came out a little sloppy and I didn't like how it was. But overall I feel I was kind of happy with how this turned out. Like, cause I usually pencil most of the stuff before I draw, because I like to keep things neat and predictable. But these are really fun to do. I do them from time to time. So drawing this other guy, I should have made the lines clearer for his head. Like one line should have been the outline of his head. Here it looks like I got these really sketchy lines and I don't like that. So I decided to add this mohawk to him. But when you draw another figure, when you're doing these types of drawings, you got to make sure that he aligns with the other figure pretty well. So I had to make sure that he abides by the perspective of the other guy. I don't know if I did too well with that, but it feels like he's a little out of place, but I still feel like in the end he turned out alright. But yeah, you see how he's not taken away from the other figure because he is looking at him. So once your eyes look at the page, right, you got to make sure you can guide the viewer's eye. So the guy, the viewer looks at the page, right? They'll probably see the guy in the helmet first, because who's not gonna notice a cool helmet, right? And then they're gonna look at what this guy is doing, which he's like kind of about to stab this dude, right? And this dude is looking back at him. So it's kind of gonna shift. Like the viewer always looks at the main thing, the thing with the highest contrast on the paper, or a face, right? And they'll probably notice the main thing you drew. Hopefully you drew it well and you drew the face really well, because the first thing people look at is the face, and then they look at the hands, and then they look at other things that are high in contrast on the page. So here it's probably going to be that guy's helmet, because the eyes are glowing, right, in that really dark helmet of his. And then this guy is going to be looking back at that guy, and as long as when you draw the figures they're not too out of perspective, it's not going to be too distracting, the picture's going to flow right. So I think this guy's head is in the correct perspective and in the correct foreshortening, I think, also because he is closer to the viewer. Well, in terms of the camera angle we're drawing in, right, he's closer, he's more in the foreground than the main subject. So seems decent so far. I really like the mohawk too. Not really a mohawk, I'm not sure what it is. It's really wonky hair. Looks cool though. Here I'm gonna draw the ear, give it some character. It looks like it has a piece bitten out of it. Some kind of bird bit it or something. Or maybe he got cut by a sword in one of his many duels. What should the name for this guy be? I don't know. I'm gonna give him like a massive cleaver weapon. So let's call him Cleave. So here we're gonna shade in Cleave's shoulders. And since I'm thinking the light source is coming up from like the top, what is it? The top right. So this guy's head is kind of gonna cast like some kind of a shadow onto that shoulder. Also, like his front side is gonna be more in shadow than his back. So we're probably gonna draw thicker lines on this side, and thinner lines on the other side. See that? Kind of. Draw that deltoid. Draw the bicep there. You see how the bicep looks more flexed and the tricep is more relaxed here? Because I'm gonna have the hand bending, and it looks like his hand is gonna be in a position where the bicep is more flexed. Remember what I said before about the muscles? You gotta make sure that they look like they're being used. Don't make muscles look like they're relaxed all the time. Sometimes, that's why I really liked when I practiced anatomy. I practiced from George Bridgman books, and George Bridgman, when he drew anatomy, the thing I liked the most about it is that it always looked rigid. It looked not rigid as in like the poses of the figure. I'm talking about like the muscles and the bone structure. Like he drew anatomy in a way that made you understand its structure. I forgot who the other dude was, the one with the anatomy books, but he drew it like people didn't have any bones, and I don't like that because it just feels like everything is just gooey, and I feel like there's no structure to it. And I like things that look more structured and rigid. And so you see here, like with the hand too, like the knuckles, it feels like when somebody looks at that, they know exactly that those are knuckles and that's the guy's hand, right? Here we got the wrist bones, adding some forearms. These forearms are not anatomically accurate at all, but you get the sense that they're a forearm because forearm muscles kind of have that overlapping feature where they just go on top of each other and they look all wiry. So yeah, you could always imply things as long as you understand what they look like realistically. You can always imply them by just simplifying or capturing the essence of them, right? And that's what art is all about. It's not about making the most detailed picture, because we got photography and we got AI now, which is going to steal all our jobs. But yeah, you got to make sure you can just simplify stuff and make it look cool in the process while you're simplifying it. Capture the coolest thing about it. Like you see pants here, like just add wrinkles to them, man. Like make them look cool. Like wrinkly pants are cool. See that? Just adding some more thickness to the lines here to make it stand out, so when I draw these pants, right, they could seem like they're in the background. Because if you want to make sure that something stands out more, if you give it a thicker outline, see, it just stands out more. I want his head to stand out from his back. Give it that thicker outline. See that? You give, yeah, there we go. See, that's what I like about the brush. You see those kind of shadows? They look really neat. Drawing the other forearm. See, not anatomically accurate, but it feels like a forearm. And it feels like the guy is strong, right? You look at those, like the shapes of the limbs, they look, you gotta make sure your characters, they got like some kind of they got characteristics, you know, that show how they are. So this guy here, I want to draw like a strong looking crazy dude. And when you draw forearms that are very like ripped and, you know, very wiry, it makes the figure look stronger. That thumb didn't come out too right. It looks dislocated. I should have put that second knuckle on the thumb a little bit higher, and then bent the thumb more of like a 90-degree. But overall, I'm happy with how that hand turned out. Looks fine. It's always nice to make the pinky a little bit moved out, like a little bit more, what's it called? Make sure that it's visibly shorter than the other fingers. Because sometimes I see a lot of artists, when they draw pinkies, they make it the same size as the other fingers. Pinkies are very small, keep that in mind. It's something that pisses me off, like when I see people draw hands and all the fingers are the same size. Like, dude, if you're drawing, look at your hand. Look at your pinky. It's not the same size, man. It's not the same size. Always add a skull to the bottom of the sword. Makes it look more deadlier. See that? Then I'm gonna add the rest of whatever. Wait, what was I drawing here? Oh yeah, the big cleaver for Mr. Cleave here. Adding some shadow, so then we can add a blade to it. I really like how the facial expression turned out. Looks like a very life or death situation. Fight to the death. There we go, big cleaver. You wouldn't want to get hit by that. He looks like those, what are they called from Skyrim? I forgot what they're called. But they're those crazy people that run around with those makeshift primitive weapons. I think they were called the Forsworn. They were in Skyrim. If you haven't played Skyrim, you should play it. It's like the best game ever. Here the camera just kind of cut off whatever I was drawing at the bottom. I think I was drawing the pants. There we go. Yeah, I was shading in the pants. Really liked how these pants turned out. Really like adding those big shadows. If you can't tell by now, I really like just blocking stuff in with ink. It's the funnest thing about ink, is that you can just lay down black ink all over, like, you know, certain parts, and it looks like something. It's pretty cool. Like, isn't drawing crazy? You could just make marks on a piece of paper and they look like something. That's pretty fun. Always remember to have fun while drawing, because if you're not, then why are you doing it? Always remember, like, the shoulder muscle, it kind of connects to the chest in a way. It's kind of like well, if you think about it, it's kind of like the continuation of the pecs, those the front delts. So the deltoids, which are the shoulder muscle, the front of them, the part like closer to the chest, it kind of looks like it's the continuation of the chest muscle anyway. Like when you look at bodybuilders and they got like that really big shoulder muscle, right? It looks like it's a continuation of the chest sometimes. So sometimes you could add like that little connection to the chest, like you see here. It makes it look like it's being moved in a correct way. I don't know how to describe it, but the more you study anatomy and the more you I also recommend watching certain sports, because when you, and also like draw from photo references that have to do with like sports and athletics, because you'll realize how the human body moves. Like when I was like a few years back, I used to box, right? And I learned how to throw punches and move, and from that, I know more about human body mechanics. And so if I want to draw a person running, I know what the correct body mechanics will be when you're running. And so all I have to do will be exaggerate that, and you'll have a better drawing of a person that's running, right? Oh, my phone locked again, so I have to unlock it, sorry. Alright, so yeah, if you're drawing somebody doing a certain movement and you don't know how that movement looks like, it's going to be very difficult to just draw it, especially if you don't have a correct photo reference. So it's always good to understand how the human body moves and how gravity acts upon the human body. Because if you know how gravity works on the human body and how the human body, you know, the physics of it, how they work, you'll be able to make up movements while you draw. So that's a necessary skill if you want to be able to draw certain things like comics, or if you want to learn how to animate, or you want to, like, you know, in general, like if you're drawing poses and they're going to be very dynamic, you got to learn how the human body moves. But here you can see the image is kind of pulling itself together now. So all that's left is a background, because I didn't feel like adding in any more people. And what I decided to do is just take straight up black ink and then just draw some kind of a pillar in the background. I thought for a second that I was going to take away from the main drawing, but as I worked on it a bit more, it looked like it was pulling itself together. Yeah, Hero's adding like this illusion of like bricks that are coming apart for this background. I really like this kind of pattern. It looks very it's not very symmetrical, so it's interesting. Certain times when you're drawing, symmetry is a good thing, and sometimes getting asymmetrical can make things interesting. Like if you're drawing a human face and you want it to look like very pretty, right? You have to make sure that it's symmetrical. But if you want to make things interesting, right, and you know, you want to mix it up a bit, make things unsymmetrical. But you have to do it in a way where it isn't too distracting or it takes away from what you are drawing. But you see here how I ran into this problem with the pillars here in the background that kind of took away from the main figure, because you see how the sword here has a black handle and the background is black, so therefore it will blend in a bit. So that's the problem when you're doing backgrounds sometimes, that things begin to take away from the main subjects in the front. But here, I think I'm gonna add some kind of a castle in the background. Like they'll be fighting up some staircase. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add pillars in the foreground too. So, forgot how I did that. Alright, I hope you enjoy the rest of the video, because what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add like some kind of a ink wash to it, and then I'm gonna draw the castles in. So just stay to see that if you want to, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Yeah, till next time. Later.